Allowed to talk
No,
now.
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes and Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
News channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Peace in the Middle East. Has Donald Trump achieved the unthinkable? This is The Late Show Live. Very good evening on The Late Show Live tonight.
The promise of a new Middle East is so clearly within our reach. This is the closest we've ever come to real peace, not fake peace, not political fools.
A historic day for peace. Donald Trump unveils his 20-point plan to end the war in Gaza. But will Hamas accept his terms? Someone who has accepted is Sir Keir Starmer. In the last few moments, he profoundly welcomes the deal, he says. And guess who's back?
On Tuesday night, I gave the order for British forces to take part in military action in Iraq.
That's right, Tony Blair is involved in peace between Hamas and Israel. What do you make of that? gbnews.com/your say. Back in the UK. A lot of GB News viewers support the idea of clamping down on illegal migration. Are those viewers also racist? Farage is racist, Reform is racist, but does that mean that you at home are racist if you support policies on migration? I put that to a Labour MP today, also tonight.
Hope maybe they will one day resolve or co-join themselves and maybe accept that they never will.
Too late to apologise. J.K. Rowling has hit back at Emma Watson over their trans rights row in the most beautiful piece of prose. We're going to be also diving into the stories from tomorrow's newspapers hours before they even hit the shelves. We are live in Washington, just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories America is talking about at the end of the day here today, including...
Are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching Donald Trump? Are you watching?
Why those legendary golfers are taunting the President of the United States. I'm Bev Turner, this is The Late Show Live, and your night is just getting started. Tonight, there is only one word.
It's called peace in the Middle East. Peace, eternal peace. Peace, 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 peace. The Board of Peace, we call it. The Board of Peace. Sort of a beautiful name. The Board of Peace, with peace, peace, and peace, 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 peace. Real peace, not fake peace, not political fool's peace. Peace, peace, everlasting.
American President Donald Trump has unveiled his plan to end the war in Gaza. Peace, as just heard, in the Middle East. Despite that being the word of the day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was still talking tough.
But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
Surprise, surprise. Guess who has muscled his way back into the project?
We'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Good man, very good man, and some others. And they'll be named over the next few days. And it'll be quite the board. Working, everybody wants to be on it now.
That's right, Tony Blair. The man responsible for Iraq and Afghanistan, a man responsible, frankly, for so much of the turmoil that we've seen in the Middle East.
Ulrich, have you no idea what irony is?
Yeah. It's like Goldie and Bronzy, only it's made of iron.
He's going to be part of a transitional government to control Gaza if, of course, the fighting does end. Well, moments after the deal was announced, I spoke to Alex Ballinger, Labour MP for Halesoe in the Midlands, from their conference, the Labour conference in Liverpool. I asked him about the former Prime Minister's involvement. But first of all, I got his immediate reaction to the news.
I mean, this is a really important deal. I don't, of course, yet know the full details, but this war in Gaza has been raging for nearly 2 years. There have been tens of thousands of civilian casualties, and anything that can bring a ceasefire closer is a really important step. So if this deal actually is a deal and it will end up in a ceasefire, I think that is extremely welcome.
How do you feel about Tony Blair playing a role in this transitional committee headed up by Donald Trump? Why does Tony Blair have to be involved in this?
So Tony Blair has a lot of experience in the Middle East. He was the peace envoy many years ago, and he's maintained a close interest in what's been going on there. He wouldn't be everybody's first choice to be involved, but I think any transitional authority that takes that power of governance away from Israel and moves it towards the hands of the Palestinians is a step in the right direction. And with Tony's experience, with his knowledge of the area, I think it could be something that works well.
You say he wouldn't be everybody's first choice. I agree with you on that. But can you extrapolate a little as to what controversies does he bring with him?
So I think if you would speak to people in the region, that they would, of course, still have concerns about the war in Iraq that the former Prime Minister was involved in. But that said, we do need to have somebody that is trusted by the Israelis, that is trusted by the Americans, and can maintain the confidence of the Palestinians involved as well. And I think even though there is some baggage with the former Prime Minister, even though, of course, he has this history, he is still an important and knowledgeable person that could bring those sides together. And I think if he can do that, that will be a really important step towards ending this war.
So that was me talking earlier to Labour MP Alex Ballinger there. And just to be clear, I wasn't just reading my phone as I was having that conversation with him. I was actually looking at the news because it had broken that very minute from the White House. Breaking in the last few moments as well, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has backed Donald Trump's 20-point plan, saying it is profoundly welcome. He said, "We strongly support his efforts to end the fighting, release the hostages and ensure the provision of urgent humanitarian assistance for the people of Gaza." So let's speak now to discuss this to foreign correspondent Sarah Firth and reporter for Blaze News Rebecca Zelko, both with me in the studio. Ladies, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Rebecca, you were there in the White House this afternoon as that news was breaking. I don't know about you, but I thought the president seemed quite downbeat. He always looks a bit tired. I mean, I don't want to use that word about him because I think he's a machine. The hours that he works are extraordinary. But his delivery was fairly deadpan. Did you notice the same thing?
You know, I did notice that. There was something solemn, I want to say, about the tone when he was delivering the news to all of the attendees in the press conference, which was very packed, by the way. And I think it's part of it. If I had to speculate, I imagine a lot of that has to do with the fatigue of this war. We're coming up on now a 2-year anniversary of this conflict. A lot of people, especially Israeli allies like the United States, were really energized at the beginning. But as the years have gone on, and we've just seen this war rage on, I think people are, including the president, are becoming increasingly frustrated and fatigued with just the lack of progress.
Yeah, and so much
place.
riding on it for him, Rebecca. He wants to be remembered as the president of peace, Sarah. And this is by no means guaranteed. We're talking about peace in the Middle East, but Hamas have 72 hours from the signing of the documents this afternoon to agree to these conditions. I'm not sure what's in it for them, if that makes sense.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Bev. I mean, the missing link here is Hamas, who've come out ahead of this meeting and said they haven't even seen this 20-point plan, let alone agreed to it. I think it was surprising, actually, at that press conference that they didn't take those questions, especially for President Trump's very open with the press. I think that really reflects the sensitivity of this issue. You know, they want to get the documents signed. And just to give the audience back home a little bit of a reminder about what this 20-point plan includes, as you said, 72 hours from the signing, if Hamas agrees, for them to release all the hostages. You also have the potential framework laid out here, right, for the withdrawal of the Israeli Defense Forces. But there are some sticking points, one of which is the disarmament of Hamas. Now, we know that in the past that's not something that they've agreed to. Very interesting listening to Netanyahu and President Trump, and you played a bit there. Netanyahu saying, look, if they don't agree to this, we will do this the hard way. And President Trump sort of seemingly giving the green light. You know, this is as good a deal as they're going to get. If Hamas don't sign up to it, the US has green-lighted Israel doing its best. I do have to point out, though, from the ground, you know, what's happened in Gaza, it's difficult to see what more Israel could do in terms of, you know, the destruction that we've seen in Gaza. But it's a huge moment. You know, they called this one of the greatest days ever in civilization. It is a key moment for the president getting Netanyahu on board with this. The sticking point, exactly as you mentioned, Bev, is going to be whether they can get Hamas on board and get this over the line.
We had a guest in the studio last week, Majid Noas, who was here as part of an organisation called the Accordists, and he was going in to talk about the Abraham Accords, or the Abraham Accords, as Donald Trump was making quite a big deal out of the pronunciation of that today in the room. I am wondering what conversations were had behind closed doors, because Majid's argument is very much this peace in the Middle East can never be reduced to these two binary forces of Israel and Palestine. They need, and Gaza, they need to broaden this to the whole of the Middle East, Rebecca, and nothing will happen unless these other countries are involved. Do you think we had enough today from the pair of them, from Netanyahu and the President, about the involvement of those other Arab states in the area?
I think it's going to be one of those things that we see unfold over the next few weeks. As you mentioned earlier, there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding the situation, which is why they didn't take a lot of questions, or they didn't take any questions, actually.
Just for a moment on how unusual it is, because I'm new to this town, girls. I'm new to this press room in the White House, but you two have been there a lot longer than I have. Donald Trump is very transparent, isn't he? And he gives plenty of time, and it's very unguarded from what I can see. That is so unusual to not take questions.
It's definitely unusual. Like, as you mentioned, I mean, just a couple weeks ago, the president had the longest cabinet office meeting. It ran about 3 hours. And that's pretty remarkable for any administration, but even for this one, which is, as you said, such a transparent, makes such an effort to actually make time to speak with reporters and speak with outlets. It's very unusual. I will say, in the press conference today, he declined to answer questions, but he gave the Prime Minister of Israel the opportunity to take questions. He gestured towards him and asked if he'd like to take questions from the Israeli press, but he declined, because the Israeli press right now, he's kind of underwater in his own country.
Well, the president made the joke, didn't he, about maybe there's some friendly Israeli press here, and Netanyahu almost had to concede that there wasn't any.
Exactly.
You do wonder with Donald Trump, does he know what he's doing when he asks those questions on the public stage? It's almost like the TV guy in him comes out a little bit, doesn't he? And he starts playing mischief.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating watching him lead the administration and just the change in tempo and transparency in these press conferences. You know yourself, Bev, you've had questions from him. He is very open to the media, right, to taking those questions. Today, as we said, I think that sensitivity of the issue reflected. They don't want to be taking questions until the papers are actually signed. And of course, you've got this international stabilization force now on the sidelines, potentially. If it all goes ahead, if Hamas agrees, we know that the Israeli Prime Minister had a phone call with Qatar just before the meeting, apologized to Qatar. So it does seem like things are progressing in a way that they haven't in the past, because we have been here before, and potentially Tony Blair back on the scene.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, aren't we, between now and 2 a.m. back in the UK. I spoke to one of the people who is protesting down there this afternoon, and it took me a while to work out who was protesting, because they were Jewish people protesting against Benjamin Netanyahu. So I spoke to David Weiss. He's a rabbi and a spokesman for the worldwide religious group Neturei Karta. This is what he said to me.
Together without any human rights groups to protect us. It wasn't necessary in every Arab land. So what is the impediment to peace? This forceful occupation of another people that were living there, the Palestinians. If they would just simply, just like apartheid was removed, they will remove the occupation and say that the tens of thousands of people who maybe perpetrated crimes in Gaza, in prison camps, that they should have to relocate to England, to the United States, to Canada, and the rest of the people will want to live in peace and can live in peace. I think that would be such a simple solution. It's logical, and that's why, and it's godly. That's why it works.
I don't think we want them.
Excuse me?
I don't think we want them to come and live in England.
I can't disagree with you about that, but
The UK under Prime Minister Starmer is one of the several European countries to recognise Palestine as a state. Was that a sensible move in pursuit of peace?
That was a godly move, and it's a baby step. It's not the solution, but it is a step in the right direction. It gives the people the opportunity not to be intimidated, to be fearful of being accused of anti-Semitism when you feel the suffering of the Palestinian people and don't look at it as a conflict of religions. So that is the right step.
So that the bells you could hear there is the church there next door to the White House. But interesting nuance there, Sarah, from that rabbi, and this idea that the nationalism has to be put to one side and it just has to be about peace. I'm hoping that there are a lot more people tonight like him who do now see cause for optimism. Something has to change, surely.
Yes, I mean, look, you've had the international community rallying around recognising Palestinian statehood, not the US, of course.
Yeah.
And then last week, Netanyahu on the world stage at the UNGA, you know, that walkout was a pretty historic moment. And I think really hammered home, both to Netanyahu and to everyone watching, just how isolated he in particular is looking on the world stage now. Clearly, I think that message got through, and the pressure that President Trump will have put in those bilateral meetings today today that happened behind closed doors has paid off, because you have Benjamin Netanyahu, despite huge political pressure back home in Israel, coming out in support of this peace plan. So this 20-point plan is now, it seems, in play. It's gone over to negotiators. Hopefully, if they can get Hamas to sign up, then we'll see that kicking in and some movement potentially forward, because I think everyone has agreed that what has been playing out on the ground in Gaza is horrifying. The numbers of dead Palestinians now in excess of 60,000, and children among those dead. So yeah, real pressure on Netanyahu, and it seems that the message has got through.
Paul's got in touch at home. Good evening, Paul. Saying Blair is not liked in the Middle East. He had a job there 10 years or more ago. He left the position because they didn't like him in the Middle East. Well, he's back involved. He's going to be part of this committee headed up by Donald Trump to oversee the transition of power in that area. Let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Why is Tony Blair back involved? Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
Are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching God? Are you watching Donald Trump? Are you watching Donald Trump?
After an emphatic win in a feisty Ryder Cup over the weekend, Team Europe celebrated by taunting Donald Trump. I'll bring you the president's reply shortly, but before that...
We will soon increase the time in which someone must have lived in this country to earn indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10.
Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood vowing to get tough on immigration. It feels like we've heard all of that before. I'll bring you the latest reaction to Labour Party conference day 2 and a lot more. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Blair shouldn't be anywhere near Gaza. The idea of this kind of colonial era stuff, this, like a viceroy being appointed to run Gaza, like the Palestinian people are not capable of running Gaza themselves. This is absurd.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Bev Turner, and that was now independent MP, of course, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, reacting to the news of Tony Blair to govern post-war Gaza. We're going to have more on that shortly. But first, day 2 of Labour Party conference kicked off in Liverpool, and it had the usual obsession over Nigel Farage and promises for a brighter Britain.
The single greatest threat to our way of life and to the living standards of working people is the agenda of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party.
Unlike the plastic patriots in Reform, we in Labour are proud to be British.
Today, the boats continue to arrive, and so I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders.
Someone who got Britain building again, won new rights for working people, and is the beacon of working women across our nation. Conference, join me in thanking Angela Rayner for all she has done.
We are introducing new legislation to put our economic security first. We understand your cause, and we are recognising a Palestinian state.
Well, that was Rachel Reeves being heckled, if you're listening on the radio, and after multiple Labour politicians, including the Prime Minister, had labelled Nigel Farage and his policies as racist. I asked Labour MP Alex Ballinger a little earlier if some of you at home who might support limited migration are simply racist. It hasn't been a straightforward Labour Party conference for you. The shadow of reform casts incredibly long over politics in the UK at the moment. And of course, Keir Starmer has caused enormous controversy by calling reform racist. Is the policy of being racist, of removing indefinite leave to remain, is that the kind of language that we need to have around this particular issue? A lot of GB News viewers support the idea of clamping down on illegal migration. Are those viewers also racist, Alex?
So it's great to be here in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference. It's a really positive atmosphere. Lots of ministers really focused on delivering for the country, delivering the change that the country voted for. I was really pleased, of course, to hear Shabana Mahmood's speech earlier today, where she's talking about some of the tough measures the Labour Party is going to be taking to crack down on illegal migration, to crack down on those small boats that are crossing into the country. Some of the things that she was talking about, extending the time period for when somebody gets indefinite leave to remain here, and also looking at ensuring people are able to contribute to the community and they have a good work history before those sort of things are passed on. I think the difference between what the Labour Party is proposing and what the Reform Party is proposing is to do with fairness. So what the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage, was talking about was taking back a status that had already been given to people, taking back a status for people that had been contributing maybe to the National Health Service, that had been maybe working in universities or contributing to the care sector, people that had been here for many years already, people that had been given that right to remain by the UK government, and whipping that away. And that doesn't feel fair, I think, to lots of people that I speak to. It doesn't feel fair to Labour voters. And I think the people in the street that you talk to that think about their neighbours, their friends, the kind of people that this policy from Reform would impact, would also think that's not fair as well.
Fairness is the word, Alex, and British people feel that they are being treated unfairly at the moment by mass migration, particularly illegal migration. Those images of people coming across on boats every day with no will to stop them, that feels unfair to British people who've been here for decades, paid into the system, pensioners who can't get their knee fixed on the NHS for 2 years, people who can't get a house to live in, they feel they're at the back of the queue. Can Labour bring themselves to talk about fairness to those people?
So we are, of course, talking about fairness, and we're working really hard to crack down on this vile trade of people smuggling that is bringing people to the UK on the small boats. Now, you've heard in recent weeks a lot of the things the government is doing. This deal with France, for the first time people are being returned back to France, starting to break the smugglers' model. That's just a pilot deal, of course. It will scale up in the coming weeks and months, and that will have a large impact. And we've seen in August and September a slight reduction in the number of crossings on the back of those deals. Now, the other stuff that Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, was talking about this week at conference builds on those measures that we're already taking, because, as you say, we recognise the UK public, they do think it's unfair that people are coming here undocumented, are coming here potentially working illegally, and the changes that we're making, including the change to indefinite leave to remain, including the digital IDs, will make it more difficult for people to work here illegally, and will make it more difficult for the people smugglers to advertise and sell these crossings, discouraging people coming and reducing those numbers coming into the UK.
So you want to stay watching, because obviously the issue of digital IDs came up, and I gave him a bit of a kick in on that. So we're going to show you that in the next hour. It's quite fascinating to hear Labour MPs try to justify that. I'm still joined in the studio by Sarah Firth and reporter for Blaze News, Rebecca Zelko, as well here. Sarah, I don't know how familiar you are with British politics, living here in Washington, DC, but the Labour conference has not gone well, and it's a sign of how bad it's going when they're constantly talking about Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. I'm sure they would do better to just not mention Nigel if they see him as the problem that he clearly is for them.
I mean, now the main rival, really, the main threat to Labour, it's the new party on the scene, and Reform and Nigel Farage have put the cat amongst the Labour pigeons. I keep my toe in the UK politics, Bev. What's fascinating with what Farage has done is he has, by his own admission, used the Trump playbook, what President Trump did here, to get that support of the Make America Great Again crowd, the MAGA crowd, and he has used that to sort of set a path forward for reform. Immigration, of course, the policies that he's perhaps thinking about putting forward. We know President Trump has been very, very tough on that. It's very interesting to see certain areas where that MAGA Trump playbook is playing out in the UK, but I don't think the UK is quite where the US is. Even the acronym, for Make UK Great Again, MUCGA, doesn't work.
Make England Great Again. MEGA is getting some traction.
MEGA's getting traction.
It's a little bit annoying for people who live in Scotland and Wales. But Rebecca, in terms of listening there to the impact that Nigel Farage is having on the British political landscape, do you see the parallels with the Trump playbook here and how that's gone? I feel like we're about sort of maybe 2 or 3 years behind where you are.
I think that's accurate. I mean, you pointed out that Nigel has taken a page out of Trump's playbook. As a result, he's kind of been getting the Trump treatment. At this Labour conference, all they talk about is Nigel Farage, it's reform. They hardly mention their own policies, mostly because they're kind of unpopular. It's hard for them to stand on their own merit. And you see a lot of those parallels in the United States. I mean, if you swapped out the names and the specific terms, it looks like a clip from the DNC, where all they can talk about is Trump and MAGA Republicans. And that's a message that did not resonate with voters, as we saw in November. I mean, the president won by historic margins, immigration being one of the number one issues that he won for.
And that word racist, it's just so liberally just thrown around so that it becomes utterly meaningless now. You had the same thing here with the ICE raids and with the clamping down on the border, on the southern border. Donald Trump is repeatedly accused of being racist. It's the same thing, isn't it?
It really is similar. And when you accuse the president of being a racist, you accuse the majority of the country that voted for him for being racist, which of course it's really an extraordinary accusation, and it's one that doesn't really stick. I think a lot of people are fatigued by these pejoratives like racist or bigot or, fill in the blank. and it's really not politically effective anymore the way that a lot of people might have thought 10 years ago.
I really wonder though, Rebecca, it's interesting because back home in the UK, and Bev, you'll know this, we have that sort of disenfranchised middle class that is the silent majority that they had here in the UK. But I do think in Britain, because of our multiculturalism that we're so proud of, we have that protection of human rights in a way that I think, in particularly looking at the ICE raids, I'm interested to see whether Farage avoid some of the pitfalls that President Trump is running into. You know, in Portland right now, you've got huge protests and pushback against what ICE is doing. The policy was popular with Americans, right? Crack down on illegal immigration. And Tick, he has done that by bringing in the big guns, bringing in the military. But the implementation of that in certain cities, the pushback has been immense. And those videos you have of ICE agents not identifying themselves, picking up people off the street with their kids watching, there are huge problems, and I think that's the sort of optics that just wouldn't fly in the UK. And so I do wonder whether Farage is going to be watching that and maybe reining in the rhetoric a little bit for a UK audience.
Yes, I can see that. And we don't have the same numbers because the system here is so different in that you can have leave to remain and work and pay tax and be registered but not be legally meant to be here. That's right, isn't it? That is so different, Rebecca, to what we have in the UK, because once you are seeking asylum or seeking a visa to be able to remain or citizenship in the UK, you can't work and you can't make money. And I wonder whether the difference is so stark that the parallels between the two at some point will actually fall over in that regard, and we just don't have the same numbers as people as you do here in this country. Still, let me just have a quick look at what you're saying at home. Always the onus, Catherine says, on Israel for the Palestinian deaths, not on Hamas. It's incredible. It should always have focused on Hamas. This is where the world has lost its moral compass. And Douglas is saying President Trump knows that Tony B. Liar, quite a few of you referring to Tony Blair as Tony B. Liar on the comment site, is hated in the Middle East. Hopefully Phony Tony can find somewhere to hide. And let's have a look what else you've been saying. Have people forgotten that Tony Blair is a war criminal and he's to make absolute millions out of AD cards? Next time you talk to Trump, perhaps you should mention this. I find it disgusting that a warmonger, and it's not written in stone that he will be on the committee. I did have a little heart sink moment when I heard Donald Trump say, and Tony Blair is a very nice man. I thought, we might have to have words about that, you and me, Mr. President. Coming up on The Late Show Live tonight, US Defence Secretary appeared on the Fox News Breakfast Show this morning, deciding to show off his skateboarding skills. You have to keep watching. I will tell you what happened next. Do politicians never learn that you shouldn't do this sort of thing on live TV? I'll bring you all the front pages as well and the leading stories on both sides of the Atlantic. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah,
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Good man, very good man.
Tony Blair, good man, very good man. That was President Trump earlier today. Welcome back to The Late Show Live. And let's take a look at some of the newspaper front pages now. Your messages are coming in thick and fast on gbnews.com/yoursay about that particular appointment of Tony Blair. What is he doing? Let's look at the Daily Telegraph front page. Trump to govern Gaza with Blair. Asking the same question. Front page there also, Sir Keir Starmer at the Labour Party conference looking cash in his chinos and his trainers. The Daily Mail have gone with Rachel Reeves plotting VAT tax on private health just when you think they can't tax you anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like they are about to. The Times is running with Israel supporting Trump plan to end the war in Gaza. Obviously the biggest story, we still don't know if Hamas are going to accept the terms of this deal, but it certainly feels the closest we've been to peace. And the Washington Post is leading on Netanyahu agreeing to the Trump plan for Gaza deal, but Hamas still a question. The White House, it says, also published the latest version of its peace plan that foresees hostages being released and hostilities ceasing within 72 hours of both sides agreeing to the deal. The New York Post, piece of the puzzle, PEACE. They're leading with Trump unveils his Gaza peace plan, warning Israel will finish the job if Hamas objects to the terms. Let me know your thoughts this evening. gbnews.com/yoursay. Now let's hear from London. Let's go straight to London and talk to journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth with these front pages. Benjamin, obviously the biggest story in town, the Middle East peace agreement. And also the role of Tony Blair in that venture. Your thoughts on that, Benjamin?
Well, I mean, it feels slightly like we've gone 20 years into the past because everyone's discussing Tony Blair and the Middle Eastern ID card, so it's all a bit retro. But I think it's interesting what's happened tonight because it looks like not only has Israel and the US come to an agreement over what to do with Gaza, but in the last couple of hours, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the UK for that matter, have all piled in and backed it. And so the question now is that Hamas has 72 hours, which started when Trump finished his press conference, in which to decide whether to agree to this. If they did, the 48 hostages still in Gaza would be released. About 20 of them are thought to be alive, though, God forbid, it could be even lower. And so what we have to see in the next 2 to 3 days is whether Qatar, whether the funders outside of Gaza will pressure to Hamas to finally end the war.
Yeah, and let's talk about Tony Blair's involvement then, Benjamin. I'm going to steal a word that I heard Patrick Christys use earlier about him, which was unflushable. And I did like that because it seemed very apt. The way I think most of the ills of the modern day could be traced back to Tony Blair and his enthusiasm to remain on the global stage, behind the scenes, pulling the strings. We know that he's behind the digital ID ambition, with the UN, of course, right behind him. Does Donald Trump not really understand who Tony Blair is, do you think, Ben?
I mean, look, I'm certainly a fan of Tony Blair, so we won't find much overlap in that question. But it's interesting. I mean, Tony Blair has called this plan, the Gaza peace plan, bold and intelligent. Donald Trump has said that he thinks Tony Blair is an impressive man. So clearly there's a kinship there. I think, to be honest, Donald Trump, one thing that he said since before the US election and in power is that he really wants his legacy to be end some of these wars. And so if he thinks that Tony Blair has diplomatic skills, then he's going to use them if it tries to fix this Gaza issue. And God forbid, it really needs to be fixed. I mean, you know, I was in Israel when war broke out with Iran in June, and what the Israeli people go through in perpetuity is appalling. You know, Israel has been fighting genocidal forces. It's also the case that innocent people in Gaza have obviously faced horrific existence in the last 3 years and under the fascists that are Hamas. So let's hope this does work, regardless of what we think of Tony Blair.
I never miss out an opportunity to criticise Tony Blair, Benjamin. I used to be a fan of his. I had dinner with him at Chequers when he was Prime Minister. That might surprise you. But to be honest, a lot has changed in that period of time, not least, clearly, my political opinions. What is it about him that you admire? I'm going to give you the opportunity, Ben. Convince me. Change my mind.
Well, I mean, clearly it's not just me, right? Because he is used by governments around the world as an advisor through his governance initiative. And I think he's got a great reader of people. I think he's pragmatic. He's been talking about artificial intelligence, which is now, you know, turning the world upside down. He's been talking about that for 3 or 4 years since it started to creep in to life. And, you know, actually, this will really rile you, but the COVID vaccines, he was the person who said we should split the doses so that you get one first and then another, what was it, a month later or something, to split the rollout, which was hugely effective on saving lives. So I think he's just a remarkably practical person.
Isn't he just power hungry, Benjamin? Isn't he money hungry? Isn't he just greedy? You'd never have to look far to realise there's a profit motive for Tony Blair, a perverse profit motive often, particularly when it comes to digital ID and his obsession with getting everybody signed up to it. He's always on the take.
I mean, look, if you were to use that description about Donald Trump, it would feel pretty accurate. So I think that might go both ways. Frankly, there's something quite weird about anybody that wants to rule a country, right? It takes a certain level of megalomania. But and this might rile people, you know, you got peace in Kosovo, you got Sierra Leone stabilised, Northern Ireland has had peace for, what, 25 years now. And so I actually think he's got a pretty solid record on this. If you put Iraq to one side, and actually I think it's quite good that we took out a vile nutcase like Saddam Hussein, then, you know, he's got a record of helping pretty difficult long-term wars be ended. And so let's hope he can do it again.
OK, Benjamin, thank you for staying up a little later with me this evening. We'll be back to talk to you in just a while. I'd love to hear from you at home as well. gbnews.com/your say. Right, Team Europe at this year's golf tournament celebrated a major win. The competition was overshadowed by clashes between Europe's players and American fans. Star golfer Rory McIlroy led the celebrations by taunting President Trump.
Are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching Donald Trump? Are you watching Donald Trump?
Well, it turns out that President Trump was indeed watching. He reposted the video on Truth Social with the comments, "Yes, I'm watching. Congratulations," probably through slightly gritted teeth. Still to come on The Late Show Live. The British people aren't stupid, and there's no way you're going to get consensus on digital ID from the British population. If you don't get that consensus, this policy will not work, will it? You need 100% of people on board with that. At the moment, we've got a petition. I think it's over 2 million people now just saying, I do not comply. What does Keir Starmer do then? That was me just a little earlier this afternoon, quizzing a Labour MP on the details of their digital ID plan. Tonight, Sir Keir Starmer's former aide has warned it'll be dead in the water within 6 months. But before that, J.K. Rowling hits out at actress Emma Watson, accusing her of trashing women's rights. Their feud has got even more heated, and GB News had something to do with it. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
From the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I just don't know what else to do other than hold these two seemingly incompatible things together at the same time and just hope maybe they will one day resolve or co-join themselves, and maybe accept that they never will.
That was Emma Watson from Harry Potter, of course, talking absolute nonsense as she tried to repair her relationship with author J.K. Rowling last week, saying she treasured her greatly. But Rowling has hit back, suggesting a one-line expression of concern was not enough to repair the damage. Quite right too. One of the world's most successful authors also attacked Watson and the other former child stars of the Harry Potter films who disagreed with her criticism of trans ideology, claiming they were ignorant and that unlike them, she wasn't a multimillionaire at 14. She accused Watson of trashing women's rights and pouring petrol on the flames when J.K. Rowling was suffering death threats earlier this year. Well, joining me now, I'm delighted to say, is GB News contributor, very close old friend of the channel, I would say, Andrew Doyle. Andrew, not that old, don't take that personally, but you know what I mean. No. I don't know about you, but what really struck me about J.K. Rowling's statement was she made it to some extent about social class, didn't she? I liked that.
Yeah, she makes a very good point that, of course, when J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter books, she was living in poverty. And she has not had the kind of privileged experience of life that the likes of Emma Watson have had. I mean, because of the success of her books and her films, she made Emma Watson a multi-millionaire. So the point she's making is, of course, when it comes to women's rights, Emma Watson is never going to have to share a mixed-sex ward at a hospital or be in a prison cell with a male rapist who identifies as female, or have any of these various issues. These are points that J.K. Rowling made in her rebuttal tweet just the other day, and she makes a very, very good point. It's it's a luxury belief of Emma Watson's, because she's never going to have to face the problems that a lot of ordinary women will face.
It reminded me a lot, Andrew, of when you hear politicians talking about mass immigration and that it won't, that it's not a problem, but you think, well, you live in your beautiful country house and you'll never have to see your high street change. I think social class is missed out of so many of these issues, and it's fundamental to it. But also, I'm interested in the timing of J.K. Rowling as well. She stayed very quiet in terms of actually criticising Emma Watson and the other actors from the series, hasn't she? So why did she say now was the time to speak out?
Well, she's been incredibly restrained. That's what I would say. J.K. Rowling, we have to put this into perspective. She's had years and years of death threats, rape threats, threats of torture, activists doxing her, throwing the most disgusting abuse, and all of it coming from this movement. The trans activist movement, of course, has violence and violent rhetoric just completely normalised within it. That's the movement that Emma Watson has thrown her weight behind and said that she would support. I think, when it came to various interviews that J.K. Rowling has done over the years, and she doesn't do many. I mean, she did a podcast about her experiences, and she specifically said to the producers she didn't want to address the issue of Emma Watson because she was concerned about bringing her into this toxic debate and getting her piled on and all the rest of it. So she was very considerate. I think she's just run out of patience. I think this latest podcast appearance where Emma Watson has said, well, I'd love for, I can, two things can be true. We can completely fundamentally disagree, but I can still love her. Well, that's a nice sentiment, but this is a movement that has been saying that J.K. Rowling should be assassinated. And as J.K. Rowling says, if you cozy up to a movement that wants me dead, how can I then say, oh, that's fine, we can still be mates? I mean, it's absolutely incoherent.
And isn't it also, Andrew, the fact that the Overton window on this issue has changed? And so Emma Watson now coming out and saying, oh, well, maybe I wasn't 100% right. She didn't go as far as that. What will happen now, I'm sure you agree, is the trans activists will now come after Emma Watson because she isn't 100% on board, and now she's going to be the focus of all of this criticism.
They already have. That cesspit known as Blue Sky, which is a rival social media platform to Twitter, where lots of leftist activists escaped to. They went in a big exodus. That is now one of the most hateful and bile-filled social media platforms available. And they've all been attacking Emma Watson for being conciliatory. They've called her a transphobe, a fascist. Someone has even posted what looks like a death threat. And Emma Watson is now learning a little too late of the nature of the kind of activists she's been supporting. Let's not forget, Emma Watson didn't just support these activists at a time when they were sending death threats and rape threats to J.K. Rowling. She also publicly supported the charity Mermaids that wants to trans children, that wants to effectively abuse children by putting them on medication for no good reason, for things that quite clearly need a psychotherapeutic approach. And the idea that Emma Watson can now roll this back is for the birds.
Andrew, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. Andrew Doyle there. Lots to come in the next hour, including Donald Trump putting tariffs on British pharmaceuticals. See you in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Like yesterday morning, there's a few fog patches around, steadily clearing in the next couple of hours. And then most places dry and bright. Main exception to that will be parts of Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Even parts of Northwest England, North and West Wales may see the odd shower. Quite cloudy in this northwestern zone, but some sunny spells coming through across the northeast of Scotland, especially along the Moray Firth. For a good chunk of the Midlands, eastern and southern England, dry and a bright day with some sunny spells once that fog has gone. And in the sunshine, temperatures getting up to 20 Celsius. So yes, a bit chilly first thing this morning, but temperatures rising nicely by this afternoon. Further north, highs of about 17 or 18. But generally, a fine day in the south, and that'll turn into a fine evening. Some cloud, some sunny spells, and still quite mild really for the end of September. Further north and west, we will have thicker cloud and the rain turning more persistent through this evening over parts of Northern Ireland and eventually setting in across western Scotland, where it's likely to last for quite some time. Still some clearer skies across the far northeast with a bit of shelter. Quite a breezy, blustery night across the northwest, and it will turn into a very wet night. That rain really setting in over western Scotland, heavy pulses of rain. Same goes for Northern Ireland too, whereas for most of England and Wales, bar the odd shower across the Lake District, most places here will be dry and fine and turn quite chilly again across the southeast. Light winds with some clear skies, temperatures in rural spots well down into single figures, whereas it will be a mild night across the far north and west. But it will be another wet day on Wednesday, with that rain really building up through Wednesday, Thursday and even into Friday in western Scotland. We're a bit concerned that rain could cause some disruption, so there is a yellow warning in place. Should ease from Northern Ireland during the day. Again, the far northeast of Scotland well sheltered, and much of England and Wales having another dry and fine day tomorrow after a chilly start. Temperatures again here up to 20 Celsius.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A historic day. Has Donald Trump got one step closer to a Nobel Peace Prize? This is The Late Show Live. I'm Bev Turner on The Late Show Live tonight.
The promise of a new Middle East is so clearly within our reach. This is the closest we've ever come to real peace, not fake peace, not political fool.
A historic day for peace. Donald Trump has unveiled his 20-point plan to end the war in Gaza. But will Hamas accept his terms? They've got 72 hours. Someone who has accepted is Sir Keir Starmer. In the last few moments, he profoundly welcomes, he says, the deal. And guess who's back?
On Tuesday night, I gave the order for British forces to take part in military action in Iraq.
You guessed it, Tony Blair, involved in peace talks between Hamas and Israel. Meanwhile, back in the UK.
A lot of GB News viewers support the idea of clamping down on illegal migration. Are those viewers also racist?
Farage is racist, Reform is racist, but does that mean that you at home who support limited migration are also racist? I put that to a Labour MP. We're going to look at that. And
the British people aren't stupid, and there's no way you're going to get consensus on digital ID from the British population. If you don't get that consensus, this policy will not work, will it? You need 100% of people on board with that. At the moment, we've got a petition. I think it's over 2 million people now just saying, I do not comply. What does Keir Starmer do then?
To see what his response was to the idea that if people don't take on digital ID, it will have to be scrapped. And a lot more. We're going to be diving headfirst into the stories from tomorrow's newspapers hours before they hit the shelves. We are live in Washington, D.C., just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about tonight. And in the second hour, the stories get hotter, the pace gets faster, the brakes have dropped. Do not go anywhere. That's right, there are no ad breaks between now and 2 a.m, 9 p.m. here in Washington. And it's been day 2 of Labour's party conference, and it had the usual anti-Farage rhetoric.
The single greatest threat to our way of life and to the living standards of working people is the agenda of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party.
And while we work together to renew Britain, they tour the world seeking every opportunity to run our country down. Because unlike the plastic patriots in Reform, we in Labour are proud to be British, proud of our values, and we know what our flag really means.
That was Rachel Reeves, followed by Yvette Cooper there. And then there was this from the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy.
We must call his scheme to round up and deport our French, our Indian, our Caribbean neighbours who already have indefinite leave to remain what it is. It is racist. I say not in our country, not in our name, not in our time.
And don't forget this from Sir Keir Starmer just yesterday.
It's a completely different thing to say we are going to reach in to people who are lawfully here and start removing them. They are our neighbours.
That proposal is immoral, to deport people who are already here if they don't pass more stringent rules. Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think that it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
Well, to discuss this more, I'm joined in the studio by foreign correspondent Sarah Firth and reporter for Blaze News, Rebecca Zelko. Rebecca, let me come to you first about when a politician criticises a policy and criticises all the people that might be on board with that. I don't know what they think they're doing. Reform's popularity is so high at the moment in the UK, and to just keep attacking and attacking and attacking, they're attacking the people who would vote for them. It's just going to backfire, isn't it? It's very similar here with Democrats and Republicans.
Absolutely. It's political malpractice, and we saw a very similar thing take place ahead of the 2024 election. You had Democrats alienating all of their voters who protested to mass migration or who protested to the Democratic economic policy, whatever that was. It was actually a lot more vague than they would like to admit. But yeah, it really alienates the base, and as a result, we saw a lot of demographics that traditionally vote Democrat start to look across the aisle. And as a result, you had a presidential election where Trump swept all 8 swing states, which is, hasn't been done in decades since Ronald Reagan in the 80s, by a Republican president at least. And I really think that this is going to be a trend going forward if the left keeps this rhetoric up.
Because, Sarah, I do wonder what Nigel Farage makes of this rhetoric from this weekend, because they're just talking about him non-stop, which is never a bad thing, in my opinion. If you're a politician, you're looking for recognition, particularly, Reform is still a new party. But also, the British people are naturally fairly contrarian. They don't like being told that they are making mistakes or they're thinking in the wrong way, and that's all they're going to do. I wonder if Farage just sat at home rubbing his hands together going, just carry on, because you're sweeping all the votes in my direction.
Yeah, I mean, it gave him a lot of attention. He was sort of centre stage at the Labour conference because of the repeated mentions. And you're right, Bev, I mean, no such thing as bad publicity, apparently. I don't know if I agree with that fully. But look, Starmer, the Labour leadership, he's under pressure. He has got a revolt within his own party. He's been looking increasingly unstable. He wants to try and neutralise this threat of Farage and Reform. But the criticism, I think, is interesting. We haven't had Nigel Farage responding to the actual details of what they're criticising. Look, people who have the right to remain in the UK, I don't think there are many Brits necessarily, I'm not even sure if there's been polling done on it, Bev, who would say that that is something that sounds fair. But yes, making these blanket accusations just risks alienating that disenfranchised middle class. And, it's so familiar what happened here ahead of the elections when you'd speak to the Make America Great Again crowds and MAGA crowds, when you go to President Trump's rallies, right? There was just this huge cut of the population who might not openly be supportive of Trump, but in that mass, when you'd have those rallies, they were feeling that President Trump was addressing things they didn't feel comfortable to talk about and that the Democrats weren't saying out loud. And there is a similar sense back home, I think, in the UK, that Farage and Reform, what they're doing is kind of speaking to that disenfranchised silent majority, and they're getting traction, they're getting attention.
And it's that word racism, it's that word that this is racist. The British people have had identity politics on our radar. I would say we've had it shoved down our throats, frankly, for at least sort of the last 20 years. And most people are kind of on, but we get it. We are a multicultural country. We've always been a safe haven for
and
people
really proud of
who
it.
want to live there. And there are some benefit. Of course, there have been many benefits to that. But they don't want, I don't think British people want this word racism just bandied around. We've become more sophisticated on that issue, I think, is what I'm struggling to articulate here. That we know the difference between a person of colour coming for a job interview and that person not being given that job because they are black or because they're Asian. That's racism, right? We understand that as a concept. But just to say, if you complain about migration, that is a racist perception on the world. I don't think people agree with that anymore. It is not that. It is so much more complicated than that. It is so much more nuanced than that. We're talking about culture change over a short period of time. We're talking about limited resources to go around, all of the issues. And Labour are just very much playing into the hands of who? I don't quite know who would vote for them at the moment when they're talking like that. Let's get the take of a former Tory MP, Daniel Kaczynski. Daniel, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Can you sort of relate to what I'm trying to articulate there? When it comes to this idea of racism, the British public are much more sophisticated now. If you are as a Labour MP, you use that word liberally to criticise a whole swathe of people who have legitimate grievances. You are just going to alienate those people because they know you're not listening. Daniel.
Well, when I was a Conservative Member of Parliament, I was the first ever Polish-born British MP. We fled communist Poland in 1978, and the welcome that I found here as a child and growing up through the education system and then as a Member of Parliament is something I will never forget. The British people are extraordinarily welcoming and tolerant to outsiders and people from overseas coming to the United Kingdom. However, they have reached their elasticity point in the sense that they see these huge numbers of people coming illegally from France, a fellow European country, a safe and stable nation, a permanent member of the UN Security Council. They see that the French police are not policing their own coastline, and they are clearly very, very worried about the sheer levels of undocumented illegal migrants coming to the United Kingdom. Now, if the Labour Party does not have an answer to resolving this problem, and all they can do is to accuse those who worry about this perfectly legitimate concern as being racists, then I agree with your colleagues. They are just pushing more and more millions of British voters into the arms of reform.
Yeah. Forgive me for not knowing this, Daniel, but are you still a member of the Tory party? It can be quite hard to keep up with who is and who's left to go to reform. And if you are still a member of the Tory party, go on.
Yes, I am a member of I will always be a member of the Conservative Party. I started the campaign for the Conservative Party in 1990 when I was 18 years of age at university, and I will never leave my party.
OK, so what do the Tory party do now, Daniel? Because you've got Labour on the ropes, you've got Reform just seemingly doing brilliantly in all of the polls. Labour can't stop talking about them. The Tories are in danger of becoming a sort of middle child that no one's really talking about and everybody's ignoring. How do you get back on the radar?
Well, there's only one politician in my lifetime who has balanced the books and actually paid off the national debt, and that was a Conservative leader, Margaret Thatcher. She took those very difficult decisions in 1979 when Britain was on her knees economically to take on the trade unions and implement the pro-business policies that actually led to a massive economic recovery in Britain here in the 1980s and early 1990s. What the Conservative Party has to do is to recognise that we live at a time when Britain today, we will spend £120 billion of taxpayers' money on debt interest payments. 120 billion. That's more than we spend on the entire defence budget and the entire education budgets combined. And one of the biggest problems that the British people face is the fact that more and more of their resources and taxpayers' money is going on servicing the national debt rather than providing services that they feel strongly about. So the Conservative Party must get back to root and branch Thatcherite policies that so resonated with the people in the 1980s and demonstrated that this approach of not bashing entrepreneurs and wealth creators who this current Labour government is driving overseas, not bashing them and creating the right environment to allow entrepreneurs to thrive is the only way to save our economy.
And you feel like Kemi Badenoch is the person to bring that to the fore for the Conservatives?
Well, I said to her when we were interviewing her, I said to her, I will vote for you because I see traces of Margaret Thatcher in you. And of course, she has come under a huge amount of attacks since she became leader of the Conservative Party. But I'm old enough to remember when reading books about this. Margaret Thatcher was vilified in 1976, 77, 78 and 79. And the Tory grandees were trying to replace her, the first ever female leader of my party. She went on to be the greatest prime minister this country had. So I think Kemi is just getting her feet under the table. She's starting to resonate. I think we've got to get behind her, and I think she has every capability of implementing those Thatcherite policies that are so essential for saving this country now. Reform haven't come up with a credible economic solution. The socialists are clearly destroying the economy. This is the opportunity for Kemi to demonstrate that the Conservative Party is here to manage the economy effectively and in the way that will allow us not only to pay for ourselves, but actually create the prosperity that we all want for our children and grandchildren.
Daniel, thank you so much. Really beautifully put, actually. Former Tory MP Daniel Kaczynski there, who I now know, Sarah and Rebecca, still in the studio with me, is still a member of the Conservative Party. But actually, it is quite hard to keep up because so many of them are jumping to reform.
Good to clarify.
And especially somebody who is there, as Daniel's talking about, Margaret Thatcher being his favourite former Prime Minister. that's now become, the Conservative Party seems to be so sort of middle of the road and a little bit wishy-washy and even potentially a little left-leaning that it's quite rare to hear that from somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I liked your, how did you put it, the forgotten middle child?
Like the middle child, as someone who's having a second baby. I know you can relate to me now as you sit there with a bun in the oven.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, you do have to be careful of that. But that was interesting, Rebecca, what Daniel was saying there about you've got to be the economy, you've got to be the economy that is attractive to business and how you generate wealth and generate investment. Donald Trump is doing that very well here at the moment, isn't he?
That was a huge part of his campaign all 3 times around, and it continues to be extremely important. Going into 2024, we were just getting done with 4 years of President Joe Biden, where we saw record levels of inflation. Everyone was really unenthusiastic, I think is a mild way of putting it, when it comes to the economy. And a lot of young people especially were really feeling it. There's really low morale, and I don't think that's totally delusional to think that way. The opportunities for young people to actually own a home one day, even with a dual income household, are becoming increasingly slim. And then that trickles down culturally. People aren't getting married anymore. They're not having as many children anymore. And so, to your point, the economy, especially from his perspective as a businessman, a very successful one at that, was a huge selling point for him in 2024 and in previous election cycles.
During the state visit in Chequers a couple of weeks ago, they had a business symposium where they had the woman, Dame Sarah Walmsley, who runs GlaxoSmithKline in the UK, and various other bigwigs from industry and businesses around the world. And I was talking to Howard Lutnick, Secretary of State, on that day, and he said, the thing is, Bev, he was like, the problem is you have so much bureaucracy in the UK. There is so much red tape. It's just limiting. It's just not attractive. You just need to get rid of some of that. There is some clear water between the UK and the US. We have the highest tax burden we've had since the Second World War. There is almost no profit to be made if you start a new business in the UK now. This feeling is, why would you? It's demoralising. I've noticed here in the US, there is still this sense of opportunity.
Yep.
And has that come back with Donald Trump?
I think President Trump did bring it back. And, you know, as Rebecca was pointing out, a lot of those problems that President Trump identified in the lead up to being re-elected, we have back home, right? People not able to get on the housing ladder. Some of the recent statistics that came out, it's under Labour, it's been 0% growth.
Yeah.
I mean, 0%. It's appalling. And it's meant that the landscape now, you know, we have wonderful entrepreneurs and great minds and brilliant universities, and the opportunities just don't feel like they're there, especially for young people in the UK at the moment. So I absolutely think if any of the parties, Labour, the Conservatives, Reform, actually really nail down some policies that people can get excited about, particularly young people, when it comes to economic planning, that they'll be onto a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you both. Still to come this evening, remember, no adverts on The Late Show Live for this hour. What are you going to do with your unused gold? But still to come this evening, US Defence Secretary appeared on the Fox News Breakfast Show this morning, deciding to show off his skateboarding skills. I will tell you what happened next. It was not pretty. But before that, though, let's talk about Donald Trump threatening to whack 100% tariffs on UK pharmaceuticals. What would that mean for ordinary Brits? Don't go anywhere, no adverts between now and 2 a.m, 9 p.m. here in DC. So there's a pharmaceutical pricing showdown about to start between the US and drug makers. President Donald Trump has revealed a fresh round of tariffs on the pharmaceutical industry. Now, under this plan, Britain would face 100% tariffs on drugs imported into America. UK companies are now raising their prices in response. Let's get our heads around this by talking to healthcare economist for the Consumer Choice Centre, Fred Roeder. Fred, very good evening to you. The issue of tariffs make my brain ache, because it takes a little bit of compound thinking to work out who benefits and who doesn't. Now, we already have a problem, Fred, in the UK with drugs, since Brexit actually is one explanation, which is that our pharmacies are being charged a certain amount for the drugs that they're buying from the EU, which are high. They claim back the money from the government, and there is a gap that the pharmacists are going to be closing because they already can't bridge that gap. What will this mean? Will it just exacerbate that problem?
The announced tariff from the Trump administration so far is still fairly vague. It would mainly hurt US patients because it's a direct tax on the health of US patients. So if this 100% tariff on pharmaceuticals coming from the UK to the US would actually apply, then US patients and the health system would just pay twice as much for drugs from the UK. Now, most likely there will be lots of exemptions because they already say if you're going to have some manufacturing in the US as a pharmaceutical company, which most of them have because it's like the world's largest pharmaceutical market, these tariffs again might not apply. What the tariffs definitely do is bring more uncertainty into the health system. And on the one side, the Trump administration says we want to cut drug prices, cap them with the so-called most favored nation executive order. And on the other hand, they want to localize all pharmaceutical manufacturing through this 100% tariff. So it's kind of says two things at the same time, and it definitely brings in confusion. UK patients should be much more worried about the planned price controls of drugs in the US, because right now the US more or less funds most pharmaceutical research in the world, and US patients do. And European patients tend to spend much less in health systems on the same drugs. So if the Trump administration starts capping drug prices in the US, Europeans probably will have to pay a bit more. It's the same debate we have around NATO. For decades, Europeans have been more or less free riding on very high US defense spending within NATO. Which is something that's also right now changing, right? European countries have to increase their defense spending, and most likely European health systems will have to increase their spending on drug prices if Americans decide they want to spend less on it.
So it is complicated. I've got my panel still here with me, Rebecca and Sarah. Do you understand? Stay with me. Don't go anywhere at the moment, Fred. Just stay with me while I bring the panel into this. Do you understand this, Sarah, in terms of how it might affect British people?
I mean, I think what President Trump is trying to do here is what he promised to do, which is take on Big Pharma. He wants protection for patients. He wants to not be bowing down to the pharmaceutical boardrooms. And clearly, that doesn't just apply to here in the US, it applies to the UK too. He has been the first US president in recent times to actually be willing to take on Big Pharma in this way. And so far, some of those moves he's made have been beneficial to American patients. So it's very interesting to see how this could play out for the UK.
Yeah, Fred, is your understanding that if this starts to affect American people, American patients, or those that need the drugs, would Donald Trump row back on it? What would his next chess move be?
Drug price controls can be a very quick, short win for policymakers because you can show that you brought drug prices down. The problem is for those patients who suffer from diseases we cannot cure yet, they will be mostly impacted because investments into new cures go down. And that's usually something that's only coming on the market and benefiting the patients 2 election periods later. Right? So it's a bit of a cynical political game to jeopardize innovation in biopharmaceuticals 10 years further down the road. But if we as patients should be all concerned about innovation halting and stopping, with drug prices being regulated. And I think it's a bit unfair to always just blame the innovative pharmaceutical industry, because there are lots of layers and layers and layers of middlemen within the US health system, which is even something the Trump administration pointed out. and a lot of drug companies start trying to sell directly to the patient, which is actually something the White House likes to see, because it cuts out lots of layers of margins in the middle, bringing drug prices down, which is a better tool than top-down price controls, which is something a Republican government shouldn't be doing, right? I mean, that sounds more like out of the toolbox of Bernie Sanders.
Interesting. Thank you, Fred. Fred Roeder there, healthcare economist for the Consumer Choice Centre. Right, now then, a big marriage breakup was announced just this evening, and we're going to talk now to award-winning journalist Nelson Aspern. And this is, and you, Nelson, were a journalist who covered the wedding. We are talking about Nicole Kidman and her husband. What's her husband's name, Rebecca?
Keith Urban.
Thank you, Keith Urban. Or ex-husband, soon to be. Nelson, I thought, from looking on from the outside, they look like one of the strongest weddings in Hollywood. And I realise that's a pretty low bar. But was it a surprise to you?
Well, it was a surprise, and certainly to their fans as well. But since I've been working the phones in the last couple of hours since the news broke, people close to them were not all that surprised. But yes, I mean, they're almost like one name, Keith and Nicole. They have been synonymous with the happily ever after couple in Hollywood for almost 20 years. They met in 2005 and married a year later. As you said, I was in Sydney to cover the wedding. They installed me at the hotel where Keith and his family were staying, ostensibly to spy on them, which I did not do. But it was a fairy tale event. And it really did look like it would have some legs. Now, Nicole is worth a reported $250 million. Keith substantially less, with only $75 million net worth. But reports are that they have a very lucrative, for Keith, prenuptial agreement, that he would receive $600,000 from Nicole for every year they're married. So if this divorce eventuates, right now they're just saying they're separated, but if the divorce were to eventuate, he could stand to get almost $12 million in a payout. So that may be why the word on the street is that Nicole has been trying to save the marriage, and it was Keith who walked away, Bev.
Oh, how very cynical of you, Nelson, suggesting she's trying to save the marriage to save money, as opposed to the fact that she loves him as her husband of 19 years. But if you were there right in the beginning, you must have seen, there's always that moment, isn't there, when a couple say that they're splitting up, somebody goes, well, I did see it. I was there at the beginning. I always had my concerns about X, Y, and Z. What might it have been in their case, Nelson? Did you see anything in the early days?
No, not in the early days. And quite frankly, I've interviewed them several times over the years since their wedding day, and they are so lovey-dovey. They are so demonstrative. They're constantly showing off their love, and so now only in hindsight can we say, maybe they were overdoing it. Maybe that was for effect. But you know, we're a hungry audience for that kind of a love story, and we bought it. And we certainly, after what she went through in her split, very notable split from Tom Cruise, and then a high-profile on-again, off-again with Lenny Kravitz. After 2 decades, it seemed like this one would finally have staying power. Alas, it's Hollywood. That's showbiz.
As somebody who has spent time with them, and as you say, lovey-dovey, I think that's why, in my mind, every time I've seen them, I've thought there's this like huge display, public display of affection between the two of them. What was the power dynamic, though, Nelson? Like, who had the power in that relationship? Because that's often ultimately what it comes down to.
I have always contended that in any of these Hollywood marriages where famous people have to be with other famous people, there really can only be, just for the sake of their egos, there can only be one bigger star. Somebody has to be willing to take the back seat. And what's interesting in their dynamic is if it was a music event, Nicole took the back seat to Keith. If it were an acting event, then Keith would take the back seat to Nicole. Her worth is certainly much greater than Keith's net worth, but there never seemed to be that perfect balance between them. Nicole was undeniably the bigger, the busier star. I don't know how they managed to keep it together and raise 2 daughters when they were always on the road. Now, 2 months ago, Nicole applied for Portuguese residency. It's a very fashionable thing to do now, to get your Portuguese visa ready so that you can get out of the United States if you need to. Anyway, Keith did not apply for that residency. And the excuse was, when that came to light, was that he was busy on tour. But they are very busy people. She has 150 different projects going at any one moment, and he's always on tour. But one interesting aspect of that prenuptial agreement, reportedly there is a quote-unquote cocaine clause, that it will be null and void if he were to ever slip back into any of his well-known addiction problems. But he credited Nicole with keeping him on the straight and narrow all these years. So I don't know, maybe like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, they will somehow, someday, find their way back to each other again.
Wow, well, let's hope so. The daughters that they had together, were they adopted daughters?
No, they have two daughters together, Sunday and Faith, who are 17 and 14. Nicole had adopted two children with Tom Cruise, Isabella and Connor. Interestingly, when I was at the wedding almost 20 years ago, Isabella and Connor attended the wedding. They were brought down under to Sydney by Tom Cruise's sister. So she brought them down for the wedding, and they were on a plane, as was I, the very next day.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nelson. Really fascinating. Award-winning journalist Nelson Aspin there, who clearly knows Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban almost better than anybody in the press. Sarah Firth and Rebecca Zelko are still with me. Look, there are children involved in this, and so I always think, you know, their daughters are very similar age to mine, and that's sad, and my hearts go out to them, etc., etc. It's quite nice gossiping about a Hollywood marriage that's gone down, hasn't it?
That was proper Hollywood insider gossip.
It was good, wasn't it? I mean,
it's stuff.
The idea, though, that, as Nelson said there, about going to live in Portugal, have you heard of that? Americans signing up to go and live in Portugal should they have to escape the horror show that is Trump's America?
You know, unfortunately, I don't tend to have my finger on the pulse when it comes to whatever Hollywood celebrities are up to these days. There's always a new fad to try and keep up with. Apparently now it's going to Portugal, although I've heard great things about Portugal, so I suppose no judgment. But one thing I found interesting about this arrangement, at least when it comes to the prenup, is that Keith would be receiving more money than Nicole Kidman, when traditionally in the United States, at least with divorce law, it greatly favors women when it comes to money or custody of children, for example. Of course, this is developing news, so we don't have any information as to, you know, if there's going to be a custody battle or the nature of the divorce, if it's amicable. But it's been very interesting to see how this power imbalance might be taking place.
Can you imagine, though, Sarah, if you were Keith Urban and you're married and you're thinking, she's absolutely driving me demented, I can't stand this anymore. She's doing my head in, but if I just stick it out for another year, I get another $600,000.
I mean,
it'd be an incentive, wouldn't it?
Nelson's saying something like he's only worth 75 million in comparison. I thought that's all right. I wouldn't.
Quite a lot.
I wouldn't. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really lovely because I'm with you, Bev. I do think of the kids in these sorts of things. Relationships are difficult. I thought it was lovely that Nelson mentioned how open Keith Urban has been about Nicole helping him through his addictions over the years. I can't remember the name of the poem, but there's a beautiful poem about marriage ending that basically says no marriage is a failure. There are always, you know, they've got children, they've got these beautiful children. She's helped him through those difficult times. And so I thought it was lovely that Nelson sort of reflected on that, because it's a sad ending. Good gossip for all of us watching on in Hollywood.
Isn't it awful?
But that's showbiz, baby, as Nelson said.
That's showbiz, I'm afraid. But I agree with what Nelson said there. Every time I'd seen them, they look so sort of lovey-dovey, and they're always sort of kissing and all. And I'm like, makes you think, well, it's all happened quite quickly. I wonder if there's anybody else involved in that. These marriages don't tend to dissolve if they're apparently so in love. But anyway, it's clearly a developing story, and we will continue to gossip about it. Terrible. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
The British people aren't stupid, and there's no way you're going to get consensus on digital ID from the British population. If you don't get that consensus, this policy will not work, will it? You need 100% of people on board with that. At the moment, we've got a petition. I think it's over 2 million people now just saying, I do not comply. What does Keir Starmer do then?
So that was me opening a can of whoop-ass on a Labour MP, and the details of their digital ID plan. Tonight, Sir Keir Starmer's former aide has warned that it will be dead in the water within 6 months. We're going to be talking about the details, but before that, I will bring you all the front pages and the leading stories on both sides of the Atlantic. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. No ads.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Like yesterday morning, there's a few fog patches around, steadily clearing in the next couple of hours. And then most places dry and bright. Main exception to that will be parts of Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Even parts of northwest England, North and West Wales may see the odd shower. Quite cloudy in this northwestern zone, but some sunny spells coming through across the northeast of Scotland, especially along the Moray Firth. For a good chunk of the Midlands, eastern and southern England, dry and a bright day with some sunny spells once that fog has gone. And in the sunshine, temperatures getting up to 20 Celsius. So yes, a bit chilly first thing this morning, but temperatures rising nicely by this afternoon. Further north, highs of about 17 or 18. But generally a fine day in the south, and that'll turn into a fine evening. Some cloud, some sunny spells, and still quite mild really for the end of September. Further north and west, we will have thicker cloud and the rain turning more persistent through this evening over parts of Northern Ireland and eventually setting in across western Scotland, where it's likely to last for quite some time. Still some clearer skies across the far northeast with a bit of shelter. Quite a breezy, blustery night across the northwest, and it will turn into a very wet night. That rain really setting in over western Scotland, heavy pulses of rain. Same goes for Northern Ireland too, whereas for most of England and Wales, bar the odd shower across the Lake District, most places here will be dry and fine, and turn quite chilly again across the southeast. Light winds with some clear skies, temperatures in rural spots well down into single figures, whereas it will be a mild night across the far north and west. But it will be another wet day on Wednesday, with that rain really building up through Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday in western Scotland. We're a bit concerned that rain could cause some disruption, so there is a yellow warning in place. Should ease from Northern Ireland during the day. Again, the far northeast of Scotland well sheltered, and much of England and Wales having another dry and fine day tomorrow after a chilly start. Temperatures again here up to 20 Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Just having a nice chat with my all-female panel this evening. Rebecca and Sarah are still with me. They're going to be back with us in just a minute, but let's have a look at some of the newspaper front pages. The Sun has gone with J.K. Rowling and the gob full of ire. Brilliant headline there. I wonder how long they've been waiting to use that one. Obviously a pun on Goblet of Fire from the Harry Potter books. The Guardian are running on the biggest story of the day. Accept the peace deal or face the consequences, Hamas has been told, as we edge closer to potentially a peace deal in the Middle East. But Donald Trump said today it would hopefully be a peace deal forever, he said, in his usual superlative manner, which was brilliant. The Daily Express are running on, it's the same old tax pain with Labour. This is Rachel Reeves speaking at the Labour Party conference, hinting at more tax rises, as if the British people could take any more of that. Let me know your thoughts this evening. Visit gbnews.com/your say. Let's talk to journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, who is at GB News London for us this evening. Benjamin, let's talk about Rachel Reeves and the looming threat of more tax hikes. The British public cannot get to the end of the month and look at that payslip and see less in there at the end of the day. What is she doing, Benjamin?
Well, I think that's probably true. The problem is that Rachel Reeves is looking at the finances of the whole country and making a pretty similar conclusion. Now, the budget is not going to be until November. It was actually due to be in October, but they pushed it back, seemingly because there's so much instability in the markets at the moment. Now, the question about what she's going to do is, you know, the question she was asked all of yesterday. She wouldn't won't tell anybody, despite giving a big conference speech. But what it looks like from the front pages, the newspaper says that there could be a stealth tax of £600. In other words, people are going to go into a higher tax band, the 40% band, and that will mean a much bigger tax bill for those people. It's a problem we've had for some years now. And then the front page of the Daily Mail reports that there could be VAT added to private healthcare, which would estimated to raise around £2 billion. Now, there'll be some quite wealthy people who access private healthcare, but it's also common that employers might provide it, so it could be an extra cost to employers. And also, of course, the NHS actually uses lots of private providers. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is putting lots of people into operations in private hospitals, so that could potentially also cost the taxpayer money as well as bringing in a bit.
This is coming under that bracket, Benjamin, of just hitting the middle classes, not necessarily the super rich, but the lawyers, the doctors, the teachers, the professionals. We've had VAT on private schools, now VAT on private health. It's brutal for people who are trying to just access services which we would ordinarily get on the state, be that the health and education, feeling like those services aren't good enough for some people. And now she's going after them again. We were talking here about, just a moment ago, about incentivising the British people to earn more. Do you see much of an incentive to keep aspiring in the UK?
I think it is absolutely right. So that's the central problem that Britain faces. And it's one thing if you're 60 years old, for example, and you're going to pay a little bit more tax, but your mortgage is basically paid off. Maybe this won't be such a consequence. But there's a lot of younger people, and by younger I mean under 40, especially if they live in London or the South East. And the cost of things like housing, the rising taxes, the fact that national insurance has gone up if they're running a small business, I think it is putting people off. We've seen reports that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of millionaires leaving the UK. And we live in a changed world, right? I mean, you've just moved to the US for a great job. There are lots of people who move to the Gulf, for example, the Middle East for great jobs. And I think Britain faces a potential brain drain if its young, talented people are going to be taxed too much. And this is the nightmare Rachel Reeves faces. Because at the same time, the markets are sending a fairly clear message which says we're not sure you can service your debt. And some of the costs of that are going through the roof compared to other countries.
I know you've got strong feelings, Benjamin, on the J.K. Rowling conversation between her and Emma Watson. What did you make of J.K. Rowling hitting back at Emma Watson and using the class issue, saying that she will never have to use, what's the phrase she used? I thought it was beautifully put. She'll never have to strip off in a newly mixed sex changing room at a council-run swimming pool, and her public bathroom is a single occupancy and comes with a security man standing guard outside the door. Ouch, Benjamin Butterworth.
Well, I think neither of them will have to do that because they're both extremely rich and successful women. But look, what frustrates me about this is no disrespect to J.K. Rowling, and clearly we disagree on how you should navigate the transgender question. And of course there are transgender people and you have to work out how they fit into the world. But is that I think Emma Watson was actually trying to be really diplomatic. She wasn't personally attacking J.K. Rowling. She was saying, look, I respect her, she's given me a lot of opportunities, but I take a different view. And surely J.K. Rowling is the one that's not embracing free speech by attacking Emma Watson when she clearly wasn't trying to be personal or nasty. She simply has an alternative view.
Well, J.K. Rowling was saying, I knew you as a child and I helped you when you needed help on the set of my movies. I helped you in that nervous setting, the nerve-wracking setting of understanding your script. And I think there's clearly a sense from J.K. Rowling that she felt really betrayed by Emma Watson, and and what came out at me from that statement was just her hurt, how emotionally hurt she's been by Emma Watson, not necessarily anger.
Well, J.K. Rowling seems to feel this way a lot of the time about a lot of people, and of course she has admirers. I'm afraid that on this particular issue I'm not one. But this question that's basically put to people like Emma Watson and other stars of Harry Potter who are household names across the Western world is the idea that somehow they should just permanently be grateful because they wouldn't have been famous from those films if they weren't written. But let's look at another one, Roald Dahl, who is obviously a hugely popular author. Many famous stars have been in his films in the decades since. But Roald Dahl was an anti-Semite. He made some monstrous comments about Hitler and the Jews and saying that, you know, even Hitler had a reason. and I'm not saying that's what J.K. Rowling has said something that bad, but should stars of Roald Dahl films really be grateful to him, even though he had some pretty problematic views? I don't think they owe J.K. Rowling a lifetime of debt or a lifetime of agreeing with her.
OK, Benjamin, thank you so much. Benjamin Bosworth there, live from London with tomorrow's newspapers. Thank you. Sarah Firth is still with me, and Rebecca Zelko are also here with me. Just briefly, Rebecca, your feelings on J.K. Rowling and Emma Watson?
You know, I have to disagree. I genuinely, I get the feeling that it's just it's too little too late, is the American phrase. Emma Watson, I think it's clear that she's sensing the direction the political winds are blowing, and I think that her response, or her this newfound admiration and this reconciliatory tone that she is trying to convey, it's too late. She wasn't there when J.K. Rowling was standing up for a view that was extremely unpopular at the time. And now that it has become more popular, it's a lot easier to come out in support of J.K. Rowling now that she's no longer receiving perhaps the same amount of pushback, although I'm sure that the death threats have not subsided.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we're likely to see Emma Watson being subjected to the same sort of criticism and potential threats now that she isn't completely, unequivocally supporting the trans activists, which is what they want.
Yeah, a bit of a faux feminist there in Emma Watson. She needs to take a bit of a page from us at GB News, Bev, and have this all-female panel. This is feminism in action, Emma Watson. This is what it looks like. J.K. Rowling was having none of it. And interestingly, she actually tweeted and had a link to GB News's report.
That's right.
But look, yeah, she put Emma Watson in her place. I think she said something like, she's so ignorant she doesn't realise she's
How ignorant she is. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we spoke about that when that story broke, Emma Watson.
Yeah.
Sort of that moral equivalence, you know, it hasn't played well for anyone, and it's not got her any more fans, I don't think.
Well, J.K. Rowling said the greatest irony here is that had Emma not decided in her most recent interview to declare that she loves and treasures me, a change of tack I suspect she's adopted because she's noticed full-throated condemnation of me is no longer quite as fashionable as it was. I might never have been this honest, she says. Adults can't expect to cozy up to an activist movement that regularly calls for a friend's assassination and then assert their right to the former friend's love as though the friend was in fact their mother. I thought it was brilliantly put. If you haven't seen it, it's worth looking on the gbnews.com news website to have a look at what she said, the full statement. Now, we've been trailing this clip for you this evening. This is American Defense Secretary. He used to be a host on Fox News, didn't he? He was a host on Fox News, and he was on The Breakfast Show this morning, and maybe he was just feeling a bit relaxed. He's there with all his old mates, and so he made the mistake of trying to show off his skateboarding skills. Have a look. If you're listening on the radio, Pete Hegseth there in his suits and his trainers, and he flicks up the skateboard. I don't know, there's probably a name for that particular move in skateboarding, and he manages to hit himself in the proverbials, didn't he?
Oh, Hegseth. There's a really good pun to be made about not being the first time that Hegseth has scored an own goal. It's too late in the day for me to be witty with that, but yeah, I think we need to get Ben Leo to recreate the stunt. I'm sure he could pull it off.
I bet he could do that, indeed. Now, plans for mandatory digital IDs will apparently be dead in the water in 6 months in the face of mounting opposition to the plans. Sir Keir Starmer has been warned by his former advisor Peter Hyman. Well, I spoke earlier today to Labour MP Alex Ballinger. He was at the Liverpool Labour conference, and I was outside the White House, and this was our exchange.
The suspicion is that the numbers which are coming across are being used now as a brilliant excuse to push through digital ID. I've not seen one MP yet be able to explain, no politician can explain how that would help cure the migrant crossing crisis by safe, law-abiding citizens walking around with a digital ID in their phone. It doesn't add up. The British people aren't stupid, and there's no way you're going to get consensus on digital ID from the British population. If you don't get that consensus, this policy will not work, will it? You need 100% of people on board with that. At the moment, we've got a petition. I think it's over 2 million people now just saying, I do not comply. What does Keir Starmer do then?
So I think digital ID is going to be extremely useful for the British public. It's going to make it much easier for you to open a bank account, to buy a house, to rent a house, to go through all of those interactions that you have with the government at the moment that are quite complicated and difficult. You've got to dig around for those utility bills. It's also, by the way, something that is used in almost every other country in Europe. Everywhere I've worked in the past has had a digital ID. That has been very effective. It reduces the costs on consumers and the costs on the government, so we can invest in other areas as well. And of course, it has the benefit of making it more difficult to work here illegally. Now, I know there's been a petition, and I know some people have raised some concerns. We should absolutely be talking to people and making the case about why this is not an infringement on your civil liberties. You give way more data away to social media companies, to tech companies, to other private individuals, and you might be in the case of the government in this ID, and it will be making people's lives easier. It will help us reduce illegal migration, and I think once people understand the policy a bit more, they'll realise that and support it.
I'm not sure whether, I don't know whether you just lack imagination or whether you genuinely believe what you're telling me here, because it is a very small step between a digital ID and a social credit system with the British people beholden to a government that has powers beyond your wildest dreams of how you can control the population. And I ask you again, if 100% of the people in this country don't support it, what happens then? Are you going to put over 2 million people in prison if we don't have a digital ID?
So I think we should be talking about some sort of dystopian sci-fi novel. The digital ID is not mandatory. You're not going to have to carry it around in your pocket. No police are going to be inspecting you to make sure you have it. It's to make those transactions with the state slightly easier and slightly more secure. So you might need it, or you will need it, when you're registering for a new job, when you're maybe doing some financial transactions around a particularly large purchase, or interacting with HMRC. These are sensible things that you need your ID to do to access at the moment anyway. So there's no real change apart from making it simpler to facilitate. I honestly don't think when people really understand the policy and they ignore the scare stories that are being put out by particular people on social media, if they understand the simplicity of this thing, that they will oppose it.
Well, I disagree with you on that, Alex, but I appreciate your time enormously today from the Labour Party conference. Thank you so much. That was Alex Ballinger, MP there for the West Midlands, and he talks about, well, it's not a dystopian sci-fi novel, is it? It is, Sarah. It genuinely is a dystopian sci-fi scenario, potentially.
I mean, the warnings from some within Keir Starmer's own party about the potential damage that these digital IDs are going to do. The mood music from the UK is just not good around this for Starmer.
This is not going away. Before we have to go, I want to show you this clip. This was from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. It was a Jamaica Labour event. He's with MP Dawn Butler. Have a look.
Looking around this diverse room, Donald Trump's worst nightmare! Well, it's a pleasure to be having a great night. And remember, diversity is our greatest strength. It makes us...
So that was Sadiq Khan there saying, look at this diverse group, Donald Trump's worst nightmare. And the bit you didn't see was he says we need to make so much noise that they hear it in the White House. Donald Trump is well aware of Sadiq Khan. And I think that is inciting a sort of whipping up racial discontent, Rebecca.
There is an obsession on the left with race, and it seems to be very one-sided. As we were talking about earlier, when it comes to migration, if you insist that the opposition is just racist for having a different opinion than you, again, the majority of the country in the case of the United States, that's extremely alienating. This isn't the rhetoric that is supposed to actually garner more support. If anything, it's deepening an already deep political divide. It's pretty irresponsible.
It would just be so much classier, Sarah, to just enjoy the evening. Just don't mention it. Stop rising to it.
Yeah, I've already admitted on the show before that I am a Sadiq Khan fan, but I will say that might have played well to his base. It's tone deaf to Americans here. President Trump is setting the agenda on the international stage, global security, economy, cheap political point.
I
can't believe we got to the end of the show with 20 seconds to go and you tell me you're a fan of Sadiq Khan. We will have to dig into that next
We
time.
will.
Thank you so much to Rebecca Zelko and Sarah Firth this evening. Thank you for spending your night with me. I'll see you tomorrow night, midnight in the UK, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sleep well.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Like yesterday morning, there's a few fog patches around, steadily clearing in the next couple of hours. And then most places dry and bright. Main exception to that will be parts of Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Even parts of Northwest England, North and West Wales may see the odd shower. Quite cloudy in this northwestern zone, but some sunny spells coming through across the northeast of Scotland, especially along the Murray Firth. For a good chunk of the Midlands, eastern and southern England, dry and a bright day with some sunny spells once that fog has gone. And in the sunshine, temperatures getting up to 20 Celsius. So yes, a bit chilly first thing this morning, but temperatures rising nicely by this afternoon. Further north, highs of about 17 or 18. But generally a fine day in the south, and that'll turn into a fine evening. Some cloud, some sunny spells, and still quite mild really for the end of September. Further north and west, we will have thicker cloud and the rain turning more persistent through this evening over parts of Northern Ireland and eventually setting in across western Scotland, where it's likely to last for quite some time. Still some clearer skies across the far northeast with a bit of shelter. Quite a breezy, blustery night across the northwest, and it will turn into a very wet night. That rain really setting in over western Scotland, heavy pulses of rain. Same goes for Northern Ireland too, whereas for most of England and Wales, bar the odd shower across the Lake District, most places here will be dry and fine, and turn quite chilly again across the southeast. Light winds with some clear skies, temperatures in rural spots well down into single figures, whereas it will be a mild night across the far north and west. But it will be another wet day on Wednesday, with that rain really building up through Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday in western Scotland. We're a bit concerned that rain could cause some disruption, so there is a yellow warning in place. Should ease from Northern Ireland during the day. Again, the far northeast of Scotland well sheltered, and much of England and Wales having another dry and fine day tomorrow after a chilly start. Temperatures again here up to 20 Celsius.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening and welcome to GB News Tonight. I'll be your host, Martin Daubney. Coming up on tonight's show, any second now, we'll take you live to the White House for the hugely anticipated Trump-Netanyahu bilateral press conference. This is going to be huge, folks.
Soon increase the time in which someone must have lived in this country to earn indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10. And we will be consulting on this.
Well, having blasted Nigel Farage's mass migration plan as racist, today the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced Labour's new plan, which is sufficient, in fact, nearly identical to reforms. Meanwhile, Andy Burnham has undermined the Prime Minister once again, not once but twice in one day, just as a new poll reveals he would defeat Sir Keir Starmer in a leadership election. And the NHS has extolled the virtues of cousin marriage, and that's despite its increased risk of genetic deformities. I'll be joined by the shadow minister who tried to have it banned. Plus, seeing as it's the Labour Party conference, we thought we'd end the show with a story of how the Labour Party lost touch with its roots and abandoned the working classes. Welcome back. As we await Trump and Netanyahu to emerge, let's talk about domestic politics, because the Labour Party conference is well